the elected officials,
No, it's the same.
October 20th, 2021, 9 a.m.
Same.
Are there any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing none, we can get on with our first discussion item, which is internet technology, cyber survivability. And at the IAC conference, Grant and I had talked a little bit, and I had attended a meeting where a couple of the larger counties had encountered some cyber attacks, and yeah, it didn't work out well for them. So I think that Kootenai County might have a good solution. So, Grant?
Well, hopefully, solution. Yeah, so we went down to IAC this year and heard from some different folks. One of the most notable things was iCrimp. We used to have $1 million in coverage for a ransomware attack. First of all, has everyone heard of the ransomware attacks by now? They understand what that is. You get a hold of your data, encrypt it, and then hold it hostage. So, yeah, we used to have $1 million coverage on that, but unfortunately, so many counties and the covered agencies under iCrimp have had to pay out these ransoms because they have no other option. The company that covers iCrimp has dropped them, and so that $1 million coverage has now gone down to $50,000. Basically, we're not covered. It's scary. When I talk about cybersecurity versus cyber survivability, so cybersecurity used to be a buzzword, now it's just a generic term that we throw around to say we know that there's bad stuff out there and we got to be safe. But I call it the 99% to the 1% discussion, because cybersecurity is generally talking about what do we do to prevent things like this from happening. The afterthought is what do we do after it happens. And so that's where that 1% is, because we put a lot of time, effort, money into making sure that that 99% is covered. And I would say that Kootenai County has a very decent posture. I typically don't talk about this kind of stuff on public record because I don't want to pay a target on us or anything. But it is important for you folks to know that we're not coming in here today saying we're in dire straits and we're really scared, but we think we have some opportunities. And the mindset is correct right now based on these things like what's going on with iCrimp, what's happened to a lot of larger counties recently. So I'm going to jump into this. Like I told Commissioner Brooks, told him we had 37 slides. There's only one. I'm not going to bore you with my PowerPoint today. So just some talking points. We've got this outside world, right? That's where all the bad guys live, and that's what we're trying to protect against. What we're after is our data. That's the most critical thing that we have. It used to be back in the early days of viruses and stuff, they'd plant stuff in there to try to break your equipment, and that was cool, and they could say, oh, we broke you. But this has now become a $84 billion industry to exploit people's data and hold it ransom and get those payouts on it. So here's that 99% I was talking about. We've got internet firewalls, email firewalls, antivirus. We train the users, all of this stuff to try to make sure that it never happens in the first place. And again, this county has been very forward thinking. We talk to a lot of counties when we're down at IAC, and they like what they hear in what we're doing. Everyone's trying to do different things, but I feel we're very well positioned. You've given us a lot of good resources in IT to make sure that we're keeping you as safe as we possibly can. Doesn't stop the bad guy from wanting to circumvent those things. And the problem is with cybersecurity and that 99 percentile, it's always a reactionary game. We're always trying to figure out what they're going to do next and get in front of it. And generally we can, because all of these firewalls nowadays, they're part of a global network. So we own a product, and that particular brand is owned by tens of thousands of other customers around the world. So as soon as something happens and that product figures out what's going on, they blast out an inoculation to everybody who owns one, so we can recover very quickly. But it still leaves us exposed to this thing called a zero-day attack, which is when the thing is first seen. None of these firewalls have ever seen it. What do we do about it? And excuse me. So when this zero-day attack happens, what they're doing is they're getting into your network. They're not even making their presence known, or they're hoping you're not detecting them. And they don't just flip a switch. They get in, they start analyzing your financial records. How much can we actually reasonably expect to get out of this place. But more importantly, and I just got a blurb this morning from a membership that I'm part of. It's called the CISA. It's a joint task force between the NSA, FBI, a few other acronyms. But basically, they're saying right now they're expecting the new dark matter group to be sending more exploits out that are going to be directly targeting backups, and that's what we've seen since May when this group used to call themselves something else, dark something, it doesn't matter, but these exploits have now got into this system, and not only are they looking at your critical data, they're grabbing a hold of those backups and they're encrypting those too. So they're basically telling you, we've got your data, you can't use it, go ahead and try to restore from backup, you're going to find a nasty surprise, you don't have that either. Now they're going a step further, they're wiping out those backups and making sure that you have no possible way to recover from this thing. So that's where the 1% comes in, is these data backups. And there are ways to protect against this. There's some highly intelligent stuff out there, but what it all comes down to is this term called immutability, which if you look up the definition of that, which I had to do, it means without change or something that's never changing. So the concept there is, as we're writing our backups from our main production systems over to this backup system, when this backup system takes in that data, it takes that data and it makes it immutable, meaning once it's written there, it can never be modified again. To even delete data off these new systems, it has to be like the footballs that you hear about from the Secret Service. 2 people from our organization need to get in there, turn the key, and we've got to have the vendor on the phone too to say, we want this to actually happen. So it's that type of hyper intelligence being put into the backup system that I'm here to talk to you about today. And I call it the 1%, which might be deceivingly saying it's not that important, but it really is, because it's that 1% of the bad guys acting that gets through that we weren't able to block and could potentially be absolutely devastating to the county. And so as of today, 74% of all the backups that are happening, or all the attacks that are happening are zero-day attacks. So again, when I say zero-day attacks, it's something that's unknown. What our firewalls and our antiviruses and all that stuff are doing, they know about, billions of different ways and exploits that these bad guys can get in. So they're constantly monitoring our network traffic and our emails. And if any of this stuff is seen as it's coming in, it's cutting it off right there. A 0-day is when we've never seen this thing out in the wild before. And they find an exploit. You guys have heard about these, where the most recent ones that you've heard about are, we run Microsoft Exchange email systems, and there's been some exploits for that. And Microsoft's running around coming up with patches, making everyone patch right away. It's those kind of exploits that when they're first seen that are very dangerous. And that's why this landscape is changing so much right now. It used to be that these zero-day attacks were so hard to do because it took so much planning, so much coordination, and the exploits would be found, and then those global networks would shut them down before most people got hit. But these massive threat actors now, they're finding these things and they're playing their cards close. They're not letting them out. They're not acting on it until they have a massive campaign to launch. So again, it's a scary thing, but I'm gonna quit talking about that a little bit now and talk to you specifically about what I think we need to do. And that's go with a product here. Its name is Rubric. Kind of sounds like a Rubik's Cube. The name isn't that important. What we have right now is a product that I would give a B or a B+. So I don't want anyone to think that we're in dire straits and we have no backups or our backups are totally exposed out there. We have what I would say is almost immutable backups, but it doesn't have a lot of the sophistication that a more advanced backup that would get us up into that A- A range would give us. And some of those features, I'm not going to glaze your eyes over, I promise, but I just want to talk to you about some of the very key features that system can do. Right now, if we were to get hit today, I'd probably have to send everyone home for a week and say, talk to me in a week, let's see what we can do. Obviously, that doesn't sound very appealing when we're talking about continuity of government. But it's what's happened to all these agencies. They flat can't operate. I mean, you'd probably get skeleton crews, you'd do what you could on paper, everyone could keep government running, but we wouldn't run it like as we know today. We're so dependent on this data and technology. So the reason I'd have to do a week is because right now, it takes an average of 7 to 15 days just to figure out the blast radius of what's happened to this stuff. right? They get in here, they don't just, they don't encrypt everything. They try to find your sensitive data, they try to find where it's gonna hurt you the most, and they go after that data.
When you say 7 to 15 days, what does that mean for the people who work at the county?
Well, it means to do their normal job. I mean, the way to answer that is for 7 to 15 days, how would your people be able to function without having access to the department drive, the financial database, the HR database, the tax and assessment database, the Spillman system, whatever they ended up hitting, if those systems are down, how do they do their jobs without those? And that 7 to 15 days is just figuring out where they've hit us at, so that we can figure out what we've got to do. And with our system here at the county, we're able to restore fairly quickly and get things up and going. The problem is we're going to have to restore everything, because you're not going to take that 7 to 15 days to go through and try to find out, if the Spillman system was hit, what parts of it were hit? Let's go through and try to fix those ones. The fastest course of action is to just down it and bring a new clean one back from backups, and that's what we can do. And that's why I say we're holding good with a B or a B+. We can bring them back, but how much data are we going to lose if we have to go back 3 days on the financial system, where we've got hundreds of people inputting data into that, or the tax and assessment? How much productivity is lost there? Obviously, we'd find a way we'd have to endure, but we don't want to do that. And that's where newer products with more of this advanced intelligence come into play. What they're doing is, as we're backing up every day to this new type of backup device, it's analyzing that data every day that we're putting into it. And what it's doing, it's coming up with a normalization of what our data looks like. And so any normal given day, the treasurer's data drive might have 2 to 3% change in it. The rest of the data is sitting there. Well, let's say we go over a 30-day period, and on day 27, we see a spike and we see a 74% change in the treasurer. Well, either you guys were really busting out some serious data that day and going through all your stuff, or an anomaly happened. Something happened to make all of that data change. Well, that's a very, very good indicator that maybe all that data got encrypted. So it sends out alarms, and we find out very quickly with this, with one part of this thing, it's called radar that they call it, and find out where we've been hit. Now we take another part of it called sonar, and we can look into that anomaly and see specifically with reporting mechanism what data was in there. Was that PII data, or was that public record data? Do we care? Because the other thing these guys do, they not only encrypt your data and say, pay us this much money or we won't decrypt it, they're also going to say, we downloaded your data, we're going to sell it on the dark web, and if you don't pay us this amount of money too. And so sonar allows us to say, well, you got a bunch of public records, so have fun. See how much money you can make selling it, because we don't care. With our backup system today, we don't really have that ability to say we don't know what data you have, so we have to assume whatever they tell us they actually have. Now we're subject to regulatory fines. At the very least might be we let out our own employees' Social Security information, and now we've got to go get them cybersecurity insurance for personal identity theft and things like that. So there's impacts either ways, any way you spin this. So
who would fine us?
Well, I don't know directly who all the regulatory agencies are. What we have to do whenever we have a breach, we have protocols that we have to follow. If it's HIPAA, we have to report to HIPAA-regulated agencies. If it's CJIS, we have to report to ILITS and then the FBI. If it's PII, we have to report to the FBI. So there's different data and there's different regulatory bodies that we have to report to, but all of them come with, if not a fine, at least mitigation costs to protect the data that went out. And you're responsible for that. So it's a mess. So having these advanced features, not only backing up your data and making that data absolutely immutable. The other thing that this device does is it automatically integrates what we call two-factor authentication. You guys have probably all seen that. If you try to log onto your bank these days, they won't even let you just put your username and password in on their webpage. They say, oh, we're going to send you a text. Now put in this other code. That's two-factor authentication. It's something, you knew your password, but we need something else. What's something that you have to prove that you are who you are? This company takes that to a very heightened level of security, and they say, we're not even going to let you in the device unless you practice two-factor authentication, meaning myself or any other people that are administrating the device. So where our company, this company and the company we chose 5 years ago, they were neck and neck. They were two companies competing, and what I'd say has happened over the last 5 years is our company has kind of ridden the curve, or ridden whatever you wanna call it, they've stayed pretty level, and I still call them that B plus range, but this other company has really gone above and beyond and been innovative to make sure they're creating a product that, is the highest level. And basically, this is the one product that these ransom guys are walking away from when they find out you've got it. I mean, they still try to do things, they try to say, we're gonna exploit your data or something like that, but they cannot get to your backups with this thing, as of right now.
Who's this company?
This is a company called Rubric. So we've had a lot of discussions with them since IAC, spending a lot of time. Want to make sure I covered all my points here before I give you guys the big
Grant,
question, what does it cost, right?
quick question. You and I were talking, and you mentioned to me another county that had to pay the ransom.
Yes,
How much did they end up paying?
I don't know that. I don't know that they made that public. That's not typically something you make
Okay.
public.
Grant.
I don't know, public records might require, yes, Barry.
I just looked up a couple things. So it looks like Department of Health and Human Services would be the finding agency for medical stuff. And then there's one here from an Equifax fine that is Federal Trade Commission and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So federal agencies, basically.
No, thanks.
To piggyback on Jill's questions,
Thank you.
you rated us a BB plus.
Mhm.
Those that have been affected or compromised, what were their ratings in your opinion?
Knowing what happened to them, I'd have to rate them at a C minus range, probably. There are some very, very good backup systems out there. The problem is backup has, for the last 3 decades, been considered a function, or a functionality product, not a security standpoint. It's security from the standpoint that if you need your data, you go get your data, but it's never been a consideration in the industry until recently that it needs to be something that's as secure as the front end, the 99 percentile. And so the people who have been doing their backups, they've been doing an amazing job. They're doing what we call the 3-2-1 backup. You have it on 3 different types of media, you store it in 2 different places, and you have at least one set completely offline. That's great, but that one set that goes completely offline is usually a month old. So what happens is, you realize the only set you have is a month old of data, and let's say they're holding $2.5 million over our head. What's our choice as I'm sitting in this room telling you we pay $2.5 million and get back to where we were yesterday, or we rewind 1 month of all of our production as far as data goes?
Can you even trust it even if you?
Well, you'd have to bring up the data from a month ago in a sandbox environment and look at it and see if the infection was around back then. And again, you're figuring out the blast radius. You're spending this time, you're bringing in experts to say, how did they get in the first place? Because we don't want to restore all our data and then just have them come back in and do the same thing to us again. We got to figure out how they got in and block it again, so.
How appetizing is Kootenai County from target perspective?
Counties used to sit back and say, man, that really stinks for that private agency if they got to spend all that money. And just kind of hold our breath and be thankful that counties were never big targets, because we figured, well, 99% of our data is public record, so what do we care? Well, we've become targets. So I don't know what our target perspective would be. I would say it's less, because what's the adage that, when you're running from the bear with your buddy in the woods, I don't have to be faster than the bear, I just got to be faster than you. So it's a horrible thing to say, but with what this elected body has allowed us to do on the 99% side, we've definitely mitigated that target size. They're gonna have to work really, really hard to get into here. But the 1% will always exist, and that's what we've gotta be really careful of.
That's my last question. Is the 1% actually 1%, or is that just an example? Is it more like a fraction of 1%? Or is it really 1%?
It's really just a number that I didn't come up with, the industry uses these numbers just to exemplify that we're focusing so much on the perimeter and so much on prevention, but we need to remember we will never ever hit 100% on prevention. So it doesn't matter if it's 1%, 10%, 5%, the point is cybersecurity has always been focused on the 99 percentile.
Right.
And not never, but generally has not been focused on what happens when the rest of it gets through, or And in that event, what are you prepared to do? And that's where the term cyber survivability comes in that you saw on the first slide. How do we actually survive it?
But it's
When does
not
that
1 in 100,000 type of risk is kind of what I'm taking from it. Because
No,
1%
there's
to me is significant.
Okay.
1 in a million is not significant.
It's the reactionary game. I wish I had a number that I could give you, but it's with these 0-day attacks. It's not to say they're not going to find an exploit tomorrow
Right.
that gives them a 100% chance of getting in. You know, it's just
You know, we did have a Kootenai County municipality that was compromised,
we did.
and they paid a significant amount of money.
And it took them a long time to get to that point and realize that's what they were going to do. And it's not just, you don't just flip a switch after you pay it either. There's a lot of time and putting into getting it put back. It's nasty business. And my goal, it's unavoidable. My goal in here was not to come in here today and scare the heck out of you. That iCrimp did that at IAC to me already, you know. My goal is to provide what I think is an option for the county. And I think this rubric company, we ever since IAC, I came back and I've been hitting the books hard, talking with our current vendor, talking with other vendors, talking with backup implementation experts, and we've really arrived on this this product. We think this is the way to go, and I'm also hoping that you as an elected body would consider this a good time to possibly push this project forward and seek ARPA funding for this, because I would contribute a lot of the reason this has exploded over the last year and a half to be the fact that we have people working from home. We've got people, we've got data going over this 99% border all the time with personal VPNs and people taking data to and fro, and you know, their passwords are going across the web encrypted, but you never know, you know, well, do they find a vulnerability in our VPN system, and suddenly anyone who has this access from the outside, they're piggybacking on that and coming in. There's scary stuff going with that, but I absolutely do believe that the uptick has been a cause of what we've seen in the global situation over the last year and a half. So that's what I'm here today, is to appeal to this body and say that I believe this is a needed, pertinent move for the county. If I'm placing my finger on anything for our cybersecurity posture today, it's this, the backup system. And that's even rating our current one as a B+, but the current one is 5 years old. It's time to reinvest into it. It's going end of life soon, and we'd be putting money into it anyway, so it's timely. And that combined with the fact that we have the ARPA funding possibly available. So that's what I'd like to do, is take it to the task force and see if they would agree that it would be an appropriate expenditure of $500,000 is what we're looking at for a.
That's a purchase, that's not annual?
That is a purchase plus a 5-year support agreement. So basically, we'd be buying a canned solution that would last us 5 years. That provides data growth ability in the system, because obviously our data is going to grow. We're going to need more space to back up to over time. So that provides the product. That also provides a off-product landing zone to back up the data and then archive it for long term. Because not only do you want to have a current backup, you need to have incremental backups back in time too, so that when we find out the tax database, we had this anomaly and we need to look at it, what the state it was in 2 months ago, you still got to have those backups. So this is an all-in-one solution, and it'd be good for us for 5 years. 1 second, Celia. Just on the term of cost, so that $500,000. Basically, what we'd be looking at on year 6 then is about a $50,000 increase to operating budget to keep this thing going for the rest of whatever its useful life would be. We'd probably get 8 to 10 years out of this thing if we're really lucky.
Could iCrimp recognize this towards our discount program?
I have been talking to iCrimp about this for 2 years now. When they first initialized do the email training thing, we'll give you a discount, I told them, that's nice, that's fine and dandy, that's a lot of work to put into a very little return on investment, because you're training a whole bunch of people to not click on a bad link. Well, now you have to weigh that against the turnover in the county. So if we train people for 6 months and then our turnover, we've got a bunch of new people coming in, they fall into this lower percentile. If they're not trained, where did our training go? It isn't like if you train 90% of the workforce and then you have 10% new and they don't know, They haven't had the training that the other people have. Well, now you're pretty much just as exposed, because these exploits tend to go system-wide when they send out like a bad email or stuff. So anyway, that to say that when they first brought that up, I talked to iCrimp and I said, why would you do this when you're paying out, when you're covering us for $1 million for a ransom event? Why would you not want us to be able to survive that so you don't have to pay that out? Why not do things that work towards recovering and surviving from this thing instead of preventing it? Because even if I take training out of here, I'm probably still keeping that number at 98%. Training is just, it's the human factor, and we all know that the human being is where our weakest point is here. I can tell a machine, I can write a program on a machine, and it will do the same thing every single time. But a human being is gonna say, no, this one really does look legit, because there's some really sophisticated emails that come out there. You guys have sent emails to me that say, hey, Grant, does this look legit? And I have to spend time on it and scan it and think, man, I don't know. So, yes, I talked to iCrimp again when I was down at IAC, and they said, well, we'll take that under advisement. They're just running around screaming like chickens with their head cut off right now, because they've paid out so many of these things and they're losing coverage. They don't know what to do. But I mentioned that to them. They said they're gonna go talk about it. So I told them that would be a much more worthwhile endeavor as an incentive to help iCrimp as well, is to have this type of thing focused on versus the upfront type of thing.
What other agencies in the state of Idaho are using rubrics? Do you know?
I don't know in the state of Idaho. They gave me a list of, the Fortune 500s that are using it, and a lot of them are big Cisco, Palo Alto. Some of the companies that are very, very invested in creating the 99 percentile side are using rubric on the back end in their own corporations. So it speaks very highly. It's a best of breed. You aren't going to find a better solution. We've spent a lot of time looking, and there's just nothing out there. You've heard of Gartner. They do the magic quadrants on different products. They're huge in cybersecurity, and rubric is the absolute leader. When you look at, they're the most visionary and they're the most challenging in the industry right now. So,
Just as an aside, and I apologize because we're probably going over time, but can we legally pay ransom?
I would guess yes. I mean, I've seen other agencies do
I
it.
know we've seen it, but I just wondered if that's actually,
Haven't looked at it specifically, Steve.
Grant, when the agencies that have paid ransom, what guarantee do they have that the bad guys are going away?
absolutely none.
What guarantee do they have that they
Yeah.
Absolutely none, other than the fact that we have historically seen that these companies have way better support than most of us get for the products that we pay our own good money for. And the reason for that is because they know, as that $84 billion industry, that if they hold the ransom and then they don't give people's data back, people are just they're gonna realize their data's gone, they're not gonna pay it. But if they do pay it out and they consistently pay it out and get these people back up and going and make that as easy as they possibly can, then when the decision comes down to, we've got all of our data ransomed, and there's companies that pay these ransoms that haven't had their backups affected. Because again, if I'm telling you I've got to scorch earth this place and go down for 7 days, what's the trade-off? If they're only asking for $100,000, or I tell you I've got to take us down for 7 days to recover, now what's the picture look like? Right? So they get in and they figure out, that they're going to know what to do to make it very appealing. It's mind-boggling how, you wish these people are very smart. You wish they could put their time to more constructive use, but apparently it is.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. So I guess you'll just go to ARPA and start that process?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Admin campus fire drill. According to policy, we are supposed to have one, I think, every 1 to 2 years. And because of COVID, I think we missed ours last year. So I just wanted everybody's thoughts on that. It would not be the entire campus one day. It would probably take 2 or 3 days, because I think justice has to come to these rooms. And so if you make everybody go away, then that's too difficult to manage. So I guess what I'm asking of this group is, are there any major objections to having one in the next couple months? And then number two, the only other thing that would be required is to make sure that your employees know where they're supposed to go. So just reviewing that COOP plan and figuring out. I'm sorry? Right, yes, and unfortunately, looks like we just passed the best days of October, so, yes, weather will be a consideration, and,
Also tax collection, we'll have a lot of bodies, public.
Right. right. Yep. So I can let Greg, know that, but it would be nice to have it before snow. I think once the snow hits, we're not gonna have it, so. Any other thoughts, ideas?
Some advance notice to the administrative judge?
Pete
So that they
Barnes.
can try to avoid having court during.
Yes, so Pete Barnes will be our contact over there, and he will, since he's scheduling, he'll know, he'll give Greg the parameters and say, okay, these times, these dates, kind of thing. But we're gonna try to keep it as least advertised as possible, so it's really an effective drill for people. So I think that Pete Barnes will probably have the day and the time, but all the rest of us will just have, this week it's gonna happen. And that way, we can be thinking about that in the back of our mind. Jim, did you have?
I just hope it doesn't happen at elections, right?
Yes, yes, we're definitely making sure that, right. Now, I don't think that elections would be, I'm just looking at this campus and Justice. So, is it going to affect elections if we have it at this building? Okay, perfect. Make sure of that. And tax collection. Okay, anything else? All right. Elected official meeting format. I don't know who brought this up to me, but I'm thinking that it's a way to learn a little bit more about what's going on with each elected official group is to have somebody highlight what they're doing each month. So for instance, if this was Barry's month, he could talk about what's going on in his office. And so just kind of a thing, you know, like if Steve were to be next month, he'd be like, hey, tax collection's coming. Remember, we're gonna have thousands of people come through the building during that time, or whatever notable things. So would elected officials be interested in making, you know, 5-minute presentation or however long it takes?
I've only been here 6 years, we've tried this twice in all these times.
Okay. Okay.
Isn't it in the nature of the meeting that elected officials would be doing that anyway if they have a big issue or something that's gonna impact others, just to make others aware of it? It seems true by definition that we would be doing not necessarily a change in format, but when your office solicits what are the agenda items, that implicitly is what we would be doing, it seems
Yep.
to me.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, sorry, if you guys are talking, turn your mics back on. Sorry. So, I don't know, Bailey, if you wanna just restate that
Just,
briefly.
it was just a question, that I don't, the agenda item mentions a format. I don't know that we necessarily have to do a change in format. It seems to me that when the Commissioner's Office solicits agenda items for the elected officials meeting, implicitly, that means, the elected officials should consider key items that are impacting their office or other offices to then discuss those. So it seems like that should already be happening.
Okay.
I've also seen at elected officials meetings where you just quickly, you have a time set in the agenda where you just quickly go around the room and you say, you know, Bayla, do you have anything? Steve, do you have anything? Jennifer and Jim, do you have anything? Because sometimes things come up after the agenda too. And-
Round robin.
And you're only supposed to spend like 2 minutes talking about your thing.
Pardon?
Thoughts?
I think it's important that the elected officials communicate with affected departments more than everybody. I mean, I don't want it to be a show and tell. And that's oftentimes what these kind of things degenerate into. But I think the elected officials should take the responsibility to understand the impact that their operations have on other departments and make sure they coordinate with the department.
Okay. Anybody else? Thoughts? Okay, great. All right, holiday schedule. As in the past, we are looking at closing the admin building at 3 o'clock on the day after Thanksgiving. It's usually enough time for people to get out, you know, before the crowd hits downtown for the tree lighting ceremony. Closing it to the public at 3, that would give elected officials opportunity to say, okay, we're still going to work even though it's closed to the public, or if you wanted to take vacation time, the employees could take off those 2 hours. Thoughts, ideas? It's just kind of
I have some
usual.
thoughts. I'm getting a lot of heat from my staff about the day after Thanksgiving. So can we explore the possibility of having that a day that the building is closed?
A whole day?
Yeah. And I'll just be candid, you know, when you're at the top as an elected official, I'll come in for a couple hours and I take off. Staff don't have that flexibility. So, equity, fairness, I think it would be something we should consider.
To refresh my memory, did this board accept the Juneteenth,
Yes.
why consider making that a roving holiday and putting it the day after Thanksgiving?
That, yeah, we had talked about that as well, substituting Juneteenth for the day after Thanksgiving. I don't remember what Sylvia, maybe you remember.
I believe you guys stepped away from that because the courts are open. And then the courts are closed on Juneteenth. And I believe that was the discussion with the commissioners.
Right, we followed.
And the treasurer's office is open on Juneteenth because
Yes, you can't be closed this day.
it's the day before our payment deadline, and in 2022, it would be on the Monday, which is our payment deadline. We decided that we're staying open.
Well, and let's just clarify that because it's never been articulated by the board. Are we going to observe Juneteenth, which is on the 19th? If that's a Sunday, will we observe it on the 20th?
Yes.
Okay, so we are always going to observe it at the next good business day.
Well, if it falls on a Friday, if it falls on a Saturday, you observe it on Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, you observe it on Monday.
Okay.
That's the typical.
I know that the cities of Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, they swap out, thank you, Columbus Day or Indigenous Day, whatever we call it now, for the day after Thanksgiving. I know that they stay open and swap that.
And they do that, the state of Washington, the counties do that. They go to work on Columbus Day, well, now Indigenous Peoples' Day, and they'll close the day after Thanksgiving, and that includes the courts.
Is it Indigenous Day here in Idaho?
I have no idea.
It is, yeah,
It is?
yeah.
When did that?
A year or two ago?
I just looked it up recently. Idaho's one of those that did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they using both, or
I just saw
did they
Indigenous
change
peoples.
it? 'Cause I'll have to change the policy.
So Barry, your thoughts on court, because your staff will have to work if court's in session.
Yeah, if court's open, you know, we would have to take a look at what we need in terms of personnel based on the calendar. Not opposed to giving people the option. It would just be something we'd have to manage.
Yeah.
So I have a question. If the request or the consideration here is to create yet an additional holiday in addition to the list of holidays that we have, and have that additional holiday be on the day after Thanksgiving. If that's the request, I might propose that we consider, and Sylvia, correct me if I'm wrong, in our list of holidays, I believe there is one holiday that is up to the discretion of the employee. It's a personal day.
No, we do not have any personal holidays. We
Okay.
have 11 designated holidays.
Okay, so there's not one. So
No.
I was about to propose that if there was a floating holiday that could be, that maybe that'd be a policy decision that it designate the day after Thanksgiving as that, but that does not appear to be
Sylvia,
the
you
case.
said that we observe 11 holidays.
11 holidays.
What does
and
the state observe, do you know, off the top of your
I
head?
think they're at 11 as well.
Those were the two factors, the court and the state. Because I would have used Juneteenth as that floating as well, and people could use it the day after Thanksgiving. But because of the court system, that affects the clerk's office.
Okay, so with, typically with Thanksgiving, we kind of have a skeleton crew the Wednesday, obviously before Thanksgiving and Friday. So there is flexibility. I've talked to Marissa on this, where we could schedule it. It'd still be kind of floating holiday for those people that work Friday. Maybe they take Wednesday off and someone comes in Friday. But we've been doing that for quite a few years now.
So it's something that we can, continue to discuss. I don't want to add a 12th holiday. I would rather take Columbus Day or Juneteenth or something and make that work as a floating holiday. So something we can continue, but I think it's a little late for this year, for after Thanksgiving.
So let's clarify, Friday at 3 p.m., you're asking employees to either take vacation.
Or they can stay.
Okay.
Yeah, it just would be closed to the public.
And then Christmas and New Year's Day, what do those fall on this year?
So this year, you're getting the day before off. So I think Christmas is on Saturday, so we're getting the 24th off. Yep. So there's nothing additional for those two holidays.
That's me, sorry. So I was wrong about the Indigenous Peoples' Day. It isn't. I thought for sure I'd read it was Idaho was included, but it's not. Sorry.
Great.
Happy Columbus Day.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
What about allowing the elected official to run their particular area of responsibility, what they believe is best?
So treasurer has to do that because it can't be closed on June 19th.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that we need to bring back before the board and do that. But essentially that makes one holiday, so we need to really designate which holiday is going to be that floating holiday. And then that gives that flexibility to everybody. So, anything else about day after Thanksgiving this year?
Was there a preference of what holiday you'd give up to make it a floating holiday?
Juneteenth, and the second would be Columbus Day.
And the Juneteenth is because it's an operational need.
That would be my preference.
That's too great.
I would say St. Patrick's Day.
That's the Irish in you. All right, so we can bring it up at an HR meeting in the future and just, redo that. Because if the two elected officials most affected by court are saying we're okay with making that a floating holiday and we'll just adjust staff, then that's easier. All right, thank you. All right, looks like Steve's up with the ARPA update.
Brief update. To keep you guys aware, I told you we'd report back to you so there's no surprises. There is no final rule, as we spoke to you before. Not that we were expecting it, but it could still be weeks, if not months. So we're operating under what we think we're going to do. I've shared with you all kind of an evaluation process that we've drafted. It is in draft form. If you have input, I would appreciate you sharing that with me. We're going to use that evaluation format to not only determine, does the request qualify? And as I'm speaking, one of them passed these out. This is just information for the requests that we have received. So you get a flavor for what's going on. I won't go through this in any detail unless you guys have any questions. If you do have an interest to meet with me personally, please reach out to me. I tried to contact everybody last week. I've met with all the commissioners, most of the elected officials. This evaluation process that we've shared with you, I think it was last week, is in draft form. Again, if you have input, please provide it to us. Once the final rule comes out, we probably will move quickly. And when I mean quickly, I would imagine, well, actually, I'll state this. We're going to begin the evaluation process regardless of the status of the final rule sometime next month. So again, this is just an FYI. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I appreciate your comments.
Anything else right now on ARPA? Okay. All right. Routine cleaning personnel. Bela?
Thank you. I just recommended we talk about this because we did have previously a person that roamed through the county that did cleaning of surfaces. Our office has been recently impacted by a resurgence, probably not disconnected with what we're seeing in the state of Idaho. But I noticed that the absence of the cleaning, and I'm wondering if that has an impact, particularly in the high traffic offices, vehicle licensing, our front counter in the assessor's office. I gotta think that perhaps the routine cleaning did make a positive impact to keep the spread of COVID at bay. And I'm just asking the board consider bringing that back.
So Building and Grounds has been authorized for 2 temporary employees, one for this 5 months and then one for 5 months following that. And the job's been open. So, yeah, we're just waiting to hire somebody. But the intent of that position is to be set up for this room and be cleaning in the high traffic areas, subject to snow. If they've got to pull them off for snow, then that's what they're doing. So that's kind of the update on that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, any thoughts or questions on that, Bill? No? Okay, so as soon as that person's hired, we can send out a notice. But otherwise, I mean, like, our staff, they have time to go through the break room and through the front desk area, probably once a day to do that, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Does everybody still have enough cleaning products and anything that they need in that area? Okay. All right.
I just have one question on a previous subject. Steve, does the, on what you disseminated under sheriff, negative air pressure isolation housing areas, is that the jail build out? Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
If you review that and you have questions, if we don't have the request down correctly, or we're misinterpreting what you guys have submitted, now would be a good time to clarify that with us.
Okay. So I'll call for public comment. Looks like our one public member left. So.
One other thing, Leslie, before we, just kind of for information purposes, so the 7-day moving average for COVID has been very hard for me to understand, but I will just tell you that, went up to almost 100. This is in Kootenai County, down to into the 20s, or no, yeah, down to, it's been up and down. Now it's back up in the 80s. Just for, gym staff, this affects you guys, obviously, sheriff, obviously. I just don't see that the Supreme Court order canceling trials through December 6th is going to change no matter what happens. I just look at these numbers and I don't understand how they fluctuate so much, and I think part of it is the backlog of cases that you see in the paper every day when they report numbers, and they say, well, we have 800 cases backlogged. So I don't trust the reliability of these numbers, and even when there's newspaper articles saying things are getting better, I'm not sure how well you can rely on those. And so for the courts, that's just a reality that we're gonna have to deal with over time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, guys. This meeting's adjourned.